On behalf of Voiceworks and Express Media, I would like to acknowledge that this event is being broadcast from the stolen lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We would also like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of all the lands from which our readers are presenting in this broadcast, and to acknowledge the lands on which this broadcast reaches, and acknowledge First Nations peoples as the traditional custodians of this country, whose cultures are among the oldest living cultures in human history. We pay our respects to the elders of these communities, past and present, and extend that to emerging community leaders. We recognise that sovereignty was never ceded, and that colonisation is an ongoing process. It was, is, and always will be Aboriginal land.
Hi, I'm Kareena, a fiction editor for Voiceworks and an amateur stop-motion filmmaker for Voiceworks. Welcome to the launch of Butter. We have some great readings to share with you, but first up a speech from our editor, Adalia.
Hi, I'm Adalia and I am the editor of Voiceworks. So at a normal launch, I feel like the editor's speech is a great opportunity to go buy the mag or get a drink or check out who else is in the room that you might want to chat to later. At the moment, that's not the situation. So I've tried to kind of recreate that half paying attention to me energy for the stay-at-home era by making a little recipe video that should start playing now. Cool. So I want to give a bunch of thank yous, as I've said, and I realised while I was working on this speech that thanking people is actually quite awkward when you don't have an audience to clap and woohoo as punctuation. So I've gone fully 90s sitcom and downloaded a free soundboard app that I'm going to use to sort of try and create that authentic punctuation. We'll see how it goes. So I'm very excited to be launching issue 119 of Voiceworks themed Butter. Butter is the first issue I've put out as an editor and the 14th I've worked on since joining the editorial committee in 2016, which makes me feel quite old. In Butter, you will find fiction about calves, about whales, and about Gollum. You will read essays that champion suburban pools, that use history to understand the present. You'll find poems from yearning cowboys and Taiwanese frogs, poems that believe in love and that examine its aftermath. I've read the pieces in this issue a lot throughout the editing and proofreading process, but they've all really held up, and I'm still finding myself reading bits aloud to my boyfriend now that I have the issue in my hot little hands, which is to say it's really worth a read or multiple reads. A beautiful cover this issue is by Claudia Chu, whose work I remember from my first issue of Voiceworks. Our internal illustrations are by PP Dans, whose textural use of duotone printing is just so incredible, and we're really lucky to have both of them make this magazine extra beautiful. First off, I really want to thank and I guess celebrate Mira Schlossberg and Michael Sun for their amazing 2 years as editor and designer. They've made Voiceworks such an incredible magazine, and they've all been such wonderful people to work with. I would also like to thank my colleagues at Express Media, Lucy, Jess, Elmira and Jessie. So far, my entire time in this job has been under lockdown, which is definitely not the easiest way to settle into a new job. But everybody has been really helpful and kind and has stopped me from fully spiralling into doubt and confusion. I have to give a huge thank you especially to Selena Repinas, our new designer, whose visual vision for Voiceworks is so strong and exciting, and who is also incredibly patient with my many pages of notes about italicization and line spacing and indentation and M-dashes, and has just really helped get this magazine perfect. Without going full Oscars, I also want to thank my family and all the friends who have supported me and my mum. We've been so lucky to always have a support network to drive us to doctor's appointments and cook us food and complain about our various enemies, and I just can't thank anybody enough for that. As much as Voiceworks is an extremely good magazine that you can buy and read and give to your loved ones, it is also explicitly intended as a process that helps to develop the skills of everybody involved. I really can't thank the artists and editorial committee enough for all the kind and thoughtful work they do that makes that process so rewarding and such a joy. I'm really proud of this magazine, and I feel so lucky to work with all of you. Okay, that's about it from me. I'm going to pass the mic over to our brilliant readers. Thanks so much for your support of the mag, and I really hope you love it as much as I do. Bye!
Up next, we have Michelle reading Frog Sonata for poetry. Based in Sydney, Michelle Wang has graduated from Law and Film Studies in isolation. Her work ponders culture, topics of transnational storytelling and interaction, as well as ruminating over the utterly mundane. It was wholesome, gooey tenderness editing Frog Sonata. I love how Michelle's expressions fizzle and bubble up with real specificity, how the egginess of Beito, the freshness of the first oolong of winter, and the oozing, spilling mochi burst with texture and sound. Frog Sonata captures Michelle's impressions of Taiwan as an outsider, paying homage to its complex history, its distinct identity, through the combination of the tanka form with Chinese characters. Michelle, the floor is yours.
青蛙奏鸣曲 Frog Sonata 峡 Gorge 4 pairs of footfalls, conversation and grey mud and jokes while winding along Sakadang Path, bemused, arriving at the sign that reads Frog Sonata, and now listening for the overture of the Taiwanese frogs. Peanut, brown sugar, sesame, taro, matcha, coconut, strawberry, mung bean. A glutinous frenzy ensues upon a pit stop at Master Zhang's. Mochi madness. Quan, spring. At Beito, amidst the pungency of sulphuric springs, I wonder, what is the chemical composition of an egg? Blub, blub. Spa day for the ladies who languish and laugh at 42.8 degrees Celsius. A naked coffee club or the weekly mani-pedi of sorts. Scallions and oil in batter that spits and sizzles and sputters into puffy and crumbling clouds selling on the street side. Next door is fire and ice. Molten sesame paste oozing out of a chewy pillowcase onto a bed of shaved ice. Shan Mountain. The sun sets, a ruby orb dispersed in translucent pink, cradling the tea fields to sleep. For one night, we make dinner in the mountains. Instant noodles, snow peas, and jazz. Atop misty Alishan, the air vibrates and hums with songs from the frogs in the water tank. We wake up to the first oolong of winter. Tea farmer's cat is arching her back outside. Countless cups with sesame soda crackers before 8:30 a.m.
Next, we have Olivia Shenken reading for fiction. Olivia is 21 years old, likes woolen jumpers, warm cups of tea, with or without milk, and the way magpies sing. She studies literature and linguistics. Today, Olivia will be reading from her piece, Maharal. It has been my greatest pleasure to edit Maharal. Some of my favourite things about the piece are its vivid descriptions of food, its ingenious dissection of language, and its use of Jewish folklore to subvert traditional family dynamics. Maharal is a love letter to family recipes, to the power of words, and to mothers. I hope you will love the story as much as I do. Please welcome Olivia.
Hi, I'm just going to be reading an excerpt from my short story, Maharal. It started with bread and butter. Mum's dietitian had recommended she cut out a bunch of different foods from her diet to figure out what was triggering her headaches. That meant all the good stuff was off the table. Dairy, refined sugar, beloved gluten. I tried to be supportive, not to go on the diet myself. I had a long-standing daily appointment with peanut butter toast and white tea, but I tried to be more discreet. Dad didn't really notice. He lived behind his newspapers and only ate what was put in front of him. It was 4 days before Mum caved. I caught her red-handed in the kitchen late one night, a piece of buttered toast dangling from her lips. She was in her dressing gown, wrapped in a scent that pervaded my childhood, the warm mumness she only seemed to get in her pyjamas. "Oh, darling," she whispered. She always spoke quietly, as if to keep the headaches at bay. "I am trying." She really was. Her headaches had been worsening in recent years. When they came on, she'd have to rest in her bedroom, the curtains drawn. The house would fall as still as a fly caught in a web, all the struggling over with. After 4 days of dieting, she was buttering toast in the dark. At 6 days, I caught her snacking on a Mars bar. A week in, Mum was flagrantly pouring milk into her cereal. At that, I gave her a plaintive look. "I just can't," she told me in despair. "I tried, but it's tortuous, Judy." As she spoke, she spread a thick layer of butter on her toast with a crinkling noise and lathered strawberry jam on top in globs. When she bit into it, the jam stained her lips red. The headaches persisted, and I minimized my own noise to complete the silence Mum needed. Shallower breaths, gentler keyboard tapping. By December, she was increasingly taking days off work, and I took on more household chores. One afternoon, I peered into her bedroom while she slept. Her doona rose above the mattress like gently rolling hills. That familiar scent was there, surrounding me like when she used to tuck me in bed. Her pained breathing soared through the silence, and she whimpered on every exhale. I quietly shut the door. That night, I drew out a book from my shelf, a musty, leather-bound tome with gilded edges. Scanning the crumbling pages right to left, I combed slowly through the cramped Hebrew script until I registered the word golem. In the depths of Christian Europe, in the city of Prague, there was a wise man, a rabbi who was known as our teacher, Rabbi Lu, Morenu Harav Lu, Maharal. As they were in cities across Europe, the Jews of Prague were confined to a ghetto, a gated neighborhood, an abattoir cage. There was always violence, and it always peaked at the festival of Pesach, which falls near Easter time. Christians, mourning their Lord, would turn their gaze to the ghetto. They whispered of the Christ killers, who flavored their bread with the blood of Christian children. Their murmurs led to accusations, and the accusations led to screams. The Maharal, in his wisdom, resolved to create a protector for the children of Israel to ease their suffering. Hashem, the Almighty, had crafted humanity from clay, from the earth. This was Adam, human, who came from Adama, the earth. Adama, Adam, earth, human. Hashem had spoken, and the shape of those words whispered life into the soil. The Maharal could not speak his own creation into existence. He would use the holy letters of the Hebrew alphabet instead. And so he went down to the banks of the Vltava River and built a statue out of clay. Pressing an aged forefinger into the statue's still damp forehead, he wrote, Emet. Truth. And the golem's eyes opened. I studied the ancient book, piecing together the recipe, the process. One Saturday night, when I was ready, I crept into Mum's room. Careful not to wake her, I knelt on the bed. In my hands I held a bowl, and in it was mud I had gathered from the Yarra. I whispered a blessing over it. As I leant over Mum, some watery mud sloshed over the sides, staining the white sheets brown. I resolved to wash the sheets sometime, although if my plan worked, maybe Mum would soon feel well enough to do it herself. I dipped a finger into the mud, and on her forehead wrote the word, diet. English may not have been the language of the Torah, but it was sacred to me. All the stories that rested in my soul were told in English. and I felt that to use Hebrew, a language I hardly understood, would be to unleash something totally beyond my control. Traditional Lu family pancakes. 1 cup self-raising flour, gluten, 1 cup milk, dairy, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon sugar, refined, 2 tablespoons butter, dairy, 1/4 teaspoon bicarb soda, served with strawberry jam. When I woke the next morning, I could hear the crackle and hiss of something frying. A doughy smell was wafting into my room. I staggered to the kitchen. It was an unseasonably cool morning, and I shivered on the cool tile floor. Padding in with bare feet, I saw that Mum was at the stove with her back to me, making pancakes. I had failed then. I sighed, and Mum looked over her shoulder. The mud on her forehead had dried, but not before little rivulets dripped down to her temples, the sides of her nose, into her hair, like the branching pattern of a river delta. And the letters were still there. Diet. She smiled and paced up to me, pecking a kiss on both cheeks. I kissed her as well, and tasted mud on her skin. You're up early, Judy Zooty. Why don't you try some pancakes? I looked at the pile of pancakes. They were puffy and steaming. Mum turned her back to the stove. I woke up a few hours ago and I just had this urge to make pancakes. But I needed some things. Gluten-free flour, almond milk, coconut sugar. So I went shopping. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 7:14 a.m. What health food store would be open before the crack of dawn on a Sunday? Dad woke up and encountered Mum. He gaped at the muddy signage on her face, but I caught his eye and shook my head. Don't mention it to her, I mouthed. I hadn't seen Mum this excited since my high school graduation. And, after all, the pancakes tasted great.
The next reading is the piece Eat Bitter, Taste Whole, 吃苦原味 by Yanni Jiang. Yanni Jiang is a Chinese settler living, working, organizing and playing on unceded Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung lands. They are obsessed with becoming a femme fatale. It's Gemini season. They're sometimes a kleptomaniac. This piece explores language, both foreign and home, silence and expression. It discusses lineage and heritage and self-embodiment through body and language, and weaves together prose and poetry in the most beautiful forms. I love its specificity and its refusal to be simplified, or to explain itself. It is a piece written by their own voice, for their own voice. Please welcome Yanni Jiang, reading Eat Bitter, Taste Whole.
Sometimes I mute. No matter how hard I try to speak, nothing comes out. Sometimes I'm so close to uttering, my mouth fills in anticipation, saliva flowing faster than required. At the cusp of an intelligible sound, I gulp down the wetness and try again. Every time, I feel like a boiling pot of emotion threatening to spill over. Every time, I fail to make its contents known. 6 years ago, I discovered a medical term that seemed to describe these moments: selective mutism. Having an ability to name it gave me a certain level of validation and reassurance. My dysfunction could be explained cleanly, through the language of psychology and pathology. But too, like a boiling pot of water, the excess threatens to spill over, to make seen its transgression and out-of-placeness. The language of medical rationalism always fails. No, there is no known single cause of selective mutism. And beyond the rigid categories of nature, nurture, and anxiety disorders that function to explain the pathology away, I intimately sense, yet cannot make sense of, the excess that fuels my muteness. I speak with a tongue not of my own, chose to alienate what was given to me as a birthright. Of course I couldn't utter. How do I reach across the great divide, receive a script that my body performs without tension, without leaking, without fraudulence? Under duress, my body does homogeneity, assimilates, back to where you come from, back to the recesses of your throat. I just want to taste whole. 我非要原味. It's a feat of wonder to have been brought up by a woman who speaks no more than 50 words of English, a good number of which are expletives reserved for Sunnybank road rage. Especially so, given that I've never exceeded a rudimentary level of Mandarin proficiency. The Chinese restaurant menu level, CRM, within which I reside, is wide and expansive space. There are so many regional cuisines. Trying to express yourself with food items rarely gets you far enough. Communication is, of course, a two-way street, unlike the roads in Sunnybank. But having a conversation with Mum is like manoeuvring an infinite number of roundabouts. 1. Mum tries to tell me something. 2. I tell her I didn't understand X word/phrase. 3. She tries to simplify it for me. 4a. I sort of get it and shrug, proceed to 6. Or 4b. I still don't get it. 5. She asks Dad, exasperated, to translate it to me, usually in impatient Shanghainese. 6. Repeat. 1. I tried to tell Mum something in Mandarin. 2. I get frustrated and start speaking in English. 3. She calls Dad over. 4. I repeat what I said in English to Dad. 5. Dad translates this into Mandarin or Shanghainese. 6. Repeat. I have a hunch that it's hereditary. A family line fractured by movement, by willful dislocation. I ask Mum what growing up was like. I yearn to live vicariously through my mother's past in the motherland, so that I feel like I'm speaking from a known location, a body that speaks with the right cadence. There is romance in reclaiming mythological peasantry, and it's unfortunate that my only known entry point is through tropes of Orientalized China. I am exasperated when my mother cannot give me what I yearn for. Access to a lineage that affirms and makes me whole, consistent, and without tension. Mum doesn't disclose her past. She doesn't have stories for me. She can't recall small and poignant memories of growing up. She gives me nothing to ruminate on, to romanticize, to symbolize, to actualize, to hold in reverence, in pride, in sorrow, in anything. She's simply forgotten. The past has no use for her. She's here now, she tells me. Nia, the past is the past. All I did was chuku. I'm looking towards the future. Lama, I'm here now too, with selective mutism, a literal loss of words, a psychosomatic breakdown of an ability to articulate. I'm sorry I'm not better at Mandarin or Shanghainese. I'm sorry I've made fun of the way you pronounce sushi. For the longest time, I blamed you for not being there. You were either at the restaurant, Jiang, or the Jupiter. And when you tried to reconnect, I turned my nose up. I couldn't understand you anyway. It was too much work. It was easier for me to say nothing. When my emotions threatened to bubble over, when I needed you the most, I couldn't say a thing. I just leaked and leaked and leaked until the only words you say to me are, how can a daughter have no words for a mother? I ran away to Asia for 7 months to feel some sense of false proximity to people who look like me. I missed my mother's weathered hands and idolized older aunties who held my head between their weathered hands and cooed me. I thought running away was healing. I thought inhabiting rosy essentialism was home. I only called you 3 times in 7 months. I am on my mother's lap. We smell deeply of black oil and grimy money, and there is a draining sound. The tubular ceiling lights, refrigerators, drinks fridge, and display cabinet all working overtime in the Mianjin heat. There is a lull. The tradies are back on site with bellies full of sodium and carbohydrates. With my hands clean of batter, I work diligently on my mother's head, a weed removal service free of charge. She hates white hairs. Perhaps they came to her too soon. White hairs are easy to dispose of, but her body sings a dissonant tune. Lines already scratched into her palms, an engravement, an indictment. Oil berms climb up her arms like steeps. Her feet have no memory of rest. Capitalism works hard, but my mother works harder. She masks her white hairs with a vibrant L'Oreal red to bury the hatch of age. Her crimson tips are light in the afternoon sun. Clutched in my hands are dragon whispers. I can't wait to have them just for my own plucking pleasures. It feels like eternal warmth, a wordless ritual. Our bodies move with intimate purpose. In the lines of my mum's palm, I imagine dragon whispers gleaned from my grandmother, a movement performed through generations. I am, we are, our ancestors' daughters. 女书 A language among sworn sisters, transmitted matrilineally through natural and chosen woman king. She chanted her lamentations, not of her own. She chanted lamentations of her own. She wrote lives on a fan, a handkerchief at the altar. She scribed tears of her grandmother that mimed her own. She stole her grandmother's delicate shoe. Pay no mind to linearity. She lived in her first inscription, her first citation, her first incantation, and in each repetition. She is mourned, lamented, and pitied, always. She is liberated, always. She writes to make seen, embroiders to make felt, chants to make heard. Her voice is hers, is hers, is hers, is hers.
送女要塞挂万结，结娘了牛顾穷命，途过又要穷命贼，莫把。
Hi, I'm Darlene Soberano. I'm a poetry editor for Voiceworks magazine, and I'm broadcasting to you from the unceded lands of the Wotherong people of the Kulin Nation. Now, we have a reading of We Made This Desert, a poem by Eric Jiang. Eric enjoys having too many tabs open, asking convoluted questions, and dancing. He is currently a part of Laboratory, a playwriting incubator facilitated by Montague Basement. We Made This Desert is a poem about two long-lost cowboy lovers who have reunited maybe for the last time. I am very proud of Eric and all the work he has done on this poem. Please enjoy a reading now by Eric Jiang of We Made This Desert.
I'm your king, and you're my king, in boots, a neckerchief, a crown made of how I remember you, a belt made of pleather. At noon, a radio rings its announcement across empty plains. The radio's coming. I know dirt is a 5-course meal with scrupulous chewing, but this might be the real deal. And somewhere far off, Mr. Death is done with dinner, gets his coat and gun, but kills you with his eyes. Kills you standing still. Don't tell me you don't know around the clock, but I should say you look good in a changshan. Silk sleeves, gold moments. No one said I couldn't be a cowboy like you. No one tried, but you really pulled it off. And don't forget how we chose this sun, chose this earth, this dust. Ask me to strip the distances of their colour and watch me tumble down the hills, and watch you follow me. God, I'd give this all to you if I owned it. On our days off, we say the birds are us, and then we shoot them, and you look at me like you threaten to uncomplicate me. You look good in a changshan. Did I say that already? It's the only thing I can. Noise melts in the sweat of your collarbone, of your wrists pressed upon, released. The morning you leave, I talk to someone I suspect is one of my many selves. Says, if you can't lick a star, you can still fuck in the quarry, can still touch your shoulder at the rodeo. So I go. When I see you after years of silence, I can still remember the music you've made from miles away, even when I couldn't bear to listen for long. You look different without your danger. You look the same. At the rodeo, there is a horse determined to eat its doom, and your eyes meet mine. And I think I see Mr. Death backstage, messing around with the screws. Everything's alright till it isn't, and horse bites, charging toward us in all its grief, loosed from its reins that were never gonna last. Horse, now be free, eyeballs spinning out, and your eyes are wide too, and you're asking a question, and the air smells like dirt, and you're so small, and yeah, I'll hold you.
Hi everyone, I'm Clare, and I'm a poetry and non-fiction editor at Voiceworks. I wanted to thank you all for coming along to our launch. Before you go though, I wanted to add some quick butter facts. I spend a lot of time working as a children's bookseller, and I get some highly specific requests, such as, have you got a book with beavers? Or what about a book about moving house for the very first time? So naturally I thought there must be some children's books about butter. And I couldn't get past the line, we love our bread, we love our butter, but most of all, we love each other. I was obsessed with Madeline when I was younger. But this was only ever spoken in the TV show and not in the original books. So next I thought of a book I'd rather not see again, Little Black Sambo. In this story, a few tigers are chasing Sambo very, very fast around a tree. So fast, in fact, they turn themselves into a puddle of ghee. While this book was for a long time one of the most popular children's books, it is horribly racist and I really recommend anything else. So, a good butter book. The Butter Battle Book by Dr. Seuss, which is, of course, filled with fun rhymes. This is about two groups of creatures, one who butter their toast on the top and the other on the bottom, and war ensues between them. It's an allegory for the Cold War, and it was banned in the US because it ultimately argues everyone is the same and they're fighting over nothing. So be careful out there how you butter your toast. I wanted to congratulate Adalia for her very first issue as editor, and Selena, our wonderful new designer, as well as our entire editorial committee. I also want to thank our writers who have read their work today, and don't forget to subscribe to Voiceworks to read the rest of the amazing magazine. That's all from me and Fuzzy Felt Madeline here.